Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. Right now it is the morning of Tuesday, May 7th, and we're awaiting the start of today's episode of the Trump trial. Stormy Daniels is reportedly going to be taking the stand today, but we'll see. So I wanted to discuss the case a little bit, discuss where we're at right now on this thing. I asked people on Twitter to submit any questions that they had they'd like me to address, so I'll take a few of those. And I'm just going to start with the most basic question that goes to the heart of all of this, and that is, I lost it here. Where'd it go? Okay. Maggie asks, do you think he will be found guilty with what we've heard so far? Do we have a strong case? Well, that's really the heart of the question, isn't it? Look, let me say this. I have said from the beginning, since before this trial even started, before jury selection, that based on what we knew from the publicly available evidence and based on, my common sense, having been a prosecutor for many years, my belief has always been that Donald Trump will be convicted unless a mindless Trump cultist who would never vote to convict Trump under any circumstances makes their way onto this jury. Now, I'm fairly confident that that did not happen, only because jury selection is pretty good at weeding those people out. But I will tell you this, and I don't want to get into this now. Maybe I'll do a video about this later, just on this topic alone. But I will tell you this. One reason that I'm a little bit more concerned about a Trump cultist having snuck his way or her way onto the jury is because I do not like at all the way they conduct jury selection, or conducted it in this case. I don't know if this is how it's done in all New York cases or all Manhattan district cases or what. I'm not licensed to practice law in New York. I'm not familiar with the way they do things. And so once jury selection began and I saw how they were doing it, I didn't like it at all. I do not like the way they conducted jury selection. I think it makes let me put it this way. I think it greatly increases the chances that a Trump cultist could have snuck onto the jury. I think it did so in a way that if jury selection was done in a different way, the way that I'm used to jury selection being conducted, I think it makes it much more likely that a Trump cultist got onto this jury than if they had done it another way. That said, I don't have any reason to believe that a Trump cultist got on this jury. I'm just more nervous about it than I otherwise would have been. I had a lot of confidence because, as I said, I've been a part of a lot of these jury selection processes, and it is really difficult for someone who has a clear bias, who just wants to get onto the jury to acquit, to get onto the jury. In the normal process that I'm familiar with, that I've done and conducted jury selection under, it would be very difficult for a person like that to get on the jury. The way they did it in this case, it's easier for a person like that to get on the jury. I don't know why they do it this way. And again, I don't want to spend much time. I'll explain what I'm talking about in an upcoming video because it's going to take too much time. So that has always been my position, that unless a Trump cultist got onto the jury, that Trump would be convicted. I still believe that. And the reason is because the available evidence that we had before this trial even started, to me, was an overwhelming case of Trump's guilt. On top of that, what prosecutor, and this is the common sense part, what prosecutor in their right mind would be the first to bring a criminal indictment and put a former president of the United States on trial for the first time in American history unless you had a slam dunk case. Why in the world would you do that unless your evidence you consider to be rock solid? That's just common sense. And Alvin Bragg, I have no reason to believe he's a stupid man. And you'd have to be a stupid person to bring a case that's not rock solid against a former president. At least in my opinion. I don't know why anyone would do so if they did not have a rock solid case. So just because of the common sense aspect and because of, the publicly available evidence that we already are familiar with being so strong, in my opinion, I have felt from the beginning that unless a Trump cultist got onto this jury, Donald Trump would be convicted. My opinion about that has not changed. Now, as to what we've heard so far, I think we are right on track for a conviction. I think the evidence has been very strong against Donald Trump, and I haven't really heard any sort of defense theory to rebut any of this. I really haven't. Why this case is so strong is because this is largely a documents case, right? We have the receipts, very literally. Physical receipts, physical documentation of the crime. Really, the only question here is what was Donald Trump's knowledge and intent? As you know, the underlying crime is the fraudulent business records being filed with the state of New York. That is proven. But that's just a misdemeanor. Still, it's a crime. And, should Donald Trump be allowed to get away with misdemeanors? I mean, misdemeanors aren't jokes. You can do jail time for misdemeanors. There's lots of, assaulting someone without aggravating circumstances like a deadly weapon or severe bodily injury is a misdemeanor. If Donald Trump, punched somebody in the face, would we not prosecute him? If that's a misdemeanor, we'd still prosecute him, wouldn't we? So I don't buy into this, it's just a misdemeanor. Well, it's a fucking crime. I mean, do we hold former presidents, we can't indict them or charge them with misdemeanors? We can only charge them if it's a felony or... No. I mean, where'd that come from? So, anyway, that part of it, proven beyond all reasonable doubt, in my opinion. But how do we get to the felony? We get to the felony if we prove that the fraudulent business records, the crime of filing fraudulent business records, if that crime was committed in order to, with the intent to commit or conceal another crime. And there are several at issue here. And we only need to prove his intent to commit one. And by the way, we don't need to prove that crime was even committed, only that the fraudulent business records were filed with the intent to commit another crime. You don't actually have to prove the commission of that other crime beyond a reasonable doubt, only the intent to commit that other crime. So that's what this whole case is going to turn on with respect to the felony cases. What was Donald Trump's intent? And to that point, we've seen lots of evidence that Donald Trump's had the intent of committing or concealing another crime when he filed those business records. It is not believable, in my opinion, based on the evidence presented, for the defense to argue that Donald Trump filed these fraudulent business records for any purpose other than to influence the outcome of the election, which would be a campaign purpose. And that goes to the heart of this case. If he filed those records, if the payment was made in order to influence the election, Donald Trump is guilty of a felony. Because that's not how he classified those expenditures in the records, right? And so evading campaign finance laws is the crime that he was intending to commit when he filed those fraudulent business records in the way that he did. Nobody believes for a second that he was doing it to spare Melania the embarrassment, right? He didn't give a... The evidence is very clear from multiple witnesses that Donald Trump's main intent here was to bury this story in order to win the election. I think the evidence is very, very strong on that. And so, yes, I think he is going to be convicted unless a Trump cultist made their way onto this jury. And we'll just have to see. And by the way, I do not foresee Donald Trump being acquitted, even if a Trump cultist made their way onto this jury. He's not going to be acquitted, but it could result in a hung jury. I do not think there's going to be a unanimous jury saying that Donald Trump is not guilty. The best Donald Trump, in my opinion, can hope for is to get somebody just to refuse to go along with the guilty verdict, resulting in a mistrial or hung jury. That's what I think. Let's see. How damning do you think the evidence has been so far, especially the notes Weisselberg made of Michael Cohen's payment? Again, I think the evidence has been quite damning. Those handwritten notes, absolutely, those were super damaging. Let me tell you what I think so far has been the pivotal moment of the trial. Not enough has been made of this, in my opinion. And that is when, what's her face? Hope Hicks. When she broke down crying, I'm sure you've heard of that. But what she did was, it's what she said and the breakdown in conjunction, which made it such a powerful moment. Bad for Donald Trump. And that is, she admitted that Donald Trump had told her, in so many words, that this whole payment scheme was done to influence the election. And then in having to admit that on the stand, that's when she broke down. She said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Trump," or whatever the hell she said, and she starts crying. Now that evidence where she relayed how Trump made it clear that these payments were made for the purpose of influencing the election. That goes to the heart of the crime. That's ballgame right there. And the fact that she then immediately, she apologizes to Trump and then breaks down crying. All that did is put a huge punctuation mark on what she had just said. Why is she crying? She's crying because she just said to the jury, yes, Donald Trump is guilty of this felony. In so many words. And her crying just draws their attention to that. Makes it obvious to them that what she said was so damning to the case. To his defense. Huge moment. And one that will be remembered. See, part of this too is, when trials drag on and on and on, it's easy to forget some of the stuff that was said. That's not going to be easy to forget. The fact that she cried, they're going to remember that she broke down and cried. And they're going to remember why she broke down and cried. That was a hugely important part of this. Okay, what else here? His Merrick Garland taking notes about how a real prosecutor works. Merrick Garland, don't get me going on that guy. I'll just say this. I've said this a bunch of times. This makes me sick. You know, we should have been more than a year along in the federal cases. Merrick Garland took 2 years to appoint Jack Smith. We should be almost 2 years further along than we are right now. Imagine if we were 2 years further along and we would have had this Supreme Court argument on this absolute immunity crap 2 years ago. Even with all of that, all the delays, Donald Trump would already have been put on trial in the January 6th case. We would have reached a verdict a long time ago, probably over a year ago. Donald Trump would already be in prison in that case. His appeal of his conviction probably already would have been heard and resolved. He would be in prison right now. We wouldn't be having any of these discussions. Donald Trump would not be the nominee. He would be a federal inmate. And he'd probably be looking at 15 to 20 year sentence. That's where we would be right now if it weren't for fucking Merrick Garland. Don't get me going on that guy. What else here? What are the chances of him going to prison if he's convicted on that? Now, that's a good question. And I'll give you the honest answer. I don't know. But I'll tell you this. Look, normally, people who don't have prior convictions don't normally go to prison for a felony of this low level. This is not a high-level felony. It is a felony, however, which does carry the possibility of prison. However, when the defendant does not have any prior convictions, they usually don't get prison. However, there are aggravating circumstances here. Number one, this wasn't a one-count case. There are 34 felony counts. Now they're all part of the same scheme, so it's more akin to a one-count case, even though it's a 34-count indictment. But the fact is, he did this crime over and over and over and over and over again as part of this scheme. So that is an aggravating factor. Another aggravating factor, which I think is even more important here, has been Donald Trump's behavior during this trial, which the court absolutely can take into consideration when sentencing him. And, importantly, whether or not Trump will show contrition and remorse for what he has done, which you and I both know there's no chance in hell of that. So he will be defiant. He will be saying, if Donald Trump is convicted, he will be defiant. He will be saying about the verdict exactly what he's been saying about the whole process up until this point. It's a witch hunt. He's a biased judge. They're all just out to get him. He will take no responsibility. He will show no remorse. And judges take that as a severely aggravating factor. If this person who has been convicted in my court doesn't show the least bit of remorse, doesn't admit to any responsibility here, it makes it much more likely that they're going to give him prison time. So that is an aggravating factor. The way he has violated the court's rules, attacked witnesses, attacked the judge, attacked court personnel. You put all those things together, I think there is a good chance. I don't know what the odds are, maybe 50-50, but still, that's, for a felony of this low level, I think that's very good chance that he actually gets sentenced to prison. The problem is, I don't know this judge. And again, I've never practiced criminal law in New York. I don't know what's the typical outcome in New York, in Manhattan, in this district, all of that. But just generally speaking, those aggravating factors makes it much more likely that Donald Trump will in fact be sentenced to prison. Let me put it this way. I am confident, like in the 90% range of confidence, that if it were anyone else in the exact same situation, given the aggravating factors of no remorse and attacking witnesses and violating the judge's orders and all that, they would definitely go to prison. I'm almost certain that even with this low-level felony, they would go to prison. The question is, will Trump go to prison? And that, I just don't know, but I do think there is a good chance. I don't buy into any of this crap about, oh, he can't go to prison because of the Secret Service. That's nonsense. Those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. There is no exemption to a prison sentence because you have Secret Service protection. All it means is that if he's sentenced to prison, the Secret Service will be, a part of, they'll work with the prison system to make sure he's protected. But it's not a get out of prison free card that you have Secret Service protection. By the way, I apologize. I just got diarrhea of the mouth here today. I'm just going on and on. I intended to make this much more concise, but I can see I'm already at the 20-minute mark. And now I've thrown myself off. What the hell was I going to say? Don't you hate when that happens? Happens with more frequency the older you get. I forget what the fuck I was going to say. Oh, it was about Secret Service protection. Oh, yeah. I am increasingly, as an American, increasingly insulted by the entire idea of former presidents getting lifetime Secret Service protection. I really can't stand it now. I've never really liked it, but I'm like, well, I guess. Maybe for a certain period of time after they leave office. But this lifetime Secret Service protection, really, did Jimmy Carter, and not to bash Jimmy Carter by any means, God bless him. Does Jimmy Carter need Secret Service protection right now? Really? I mean, is there some realistic threat to his safety or to his life? Or any of them, really? Is George Bush? I mean, to me, it seems, I think it would be much better application of the Secret Service to protect former presidents if there was a particularized need, if there was some sort of active threat. And then depending upon the circumstances, then maybe they should be entitled, to some Secret Service protection given the circumstances. But this blanket lifetime Secret Service protection for presidents and the degree to which they're protected, look, it makes me sick to my fucking stomach when I see Donald Trump driving back to Mar-a-Lago from the airport after going to his criminal trial or some fucking rally somewhere, to see him with like a 20-car motorcade. Does he need that level of protection? It makes me sick. It's like we treat him like royalty. He's a criminal defendant in 4 different cases. Even if he wasn't, we shouldn't be treating former presidents like royalty for the rest of their life because they held a job. It makes me sick. Presidents are not supposed to be above us. They're supposed to be citizen servants. When they're out of office, they go right back to being a normal citizen. Okay, even if we're going to give them lifetime protection, do we need to treat them like freaking royalty? Do they really need a 20-car procession of limousines and SUVs and shutting down highways and we shut down fucking highways wherever Donald Trump goes anywhere. It makes me sick. There's no need for all of that. Okay, Secret Service protection does not necessitate that. It just makes me sick. Anyway, there's some other good questions here, and I apologize for not getting to them all. I don't know why I'm so long-winded today. Hope I haven't put you off by that. I'm a little mad at myself for being so long-winded. But anyways, did I just snort? That sounded like a snort. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Seriously, that didn't work. Let me try that again.